Good afternoon. I'm Jen Wilson. Welcome to Leadership Lunch Chat. So excited to be here with my friend Amy Vetter, and this is our second time this week being together. We got to be together in person and live in 3 dimensions for 2 whole days in New York for a meeting recently. And we're excited today to talk with you all about issues facing the profession. That's what Leadership Lunch Chat's all about. And today's topic we thought would be like revisiting and talking about and digging deeper on this issue of our attachment to time and how it's really not attractive. There's something about the obsession with time that is more repellent than attractive to people, to talent, especially young people, and that it's like this insane integrated part of almost our professional DNA or something, but it's damaging us. Mm-hmm. And we want to really talk about the ways we see it sort of damaging us and maybe ideas for moving away from it and just kind of tackle that. And we can't tackle it in 20 minutes, but we'll tackle as much of it as we can and pick up somewhere else in the future where we leave off. So you're welcome to share comments as we go, folks. We'd love to have you chime in here, raise issues or questions as we go. And Amy, maybe you want to start with where your mind is on this subject.
Yeah, so I think just starting from a higher level of this concern of losing staff and this gap of losing experienced staff in a firm, and then also what college students hear about the profession and these hours and all this other thing. Time and billing causes friction, not only to the staff, to potential people coming into the profession, because there's this focus on a number, and that's stressful that you feel like you can't have a life till you achieve that number. And then it also creates the wrong behavior a lot of times on the client work, the client experience, and the client side. And this is a really big mindset change that is hard, because I started in accounting, scary now, but 26 years ago in a public accounting firm. And it was immediately one of those things where I was terrified the minute they gave me my chargeable hour goal, because I thought in my head, how am I going to make that? What does that look like? And then if you are an OCD person with trying to keep up with all of that and you feel like you're failing or whatever, or you go over that time because you did the right thing for the client or you were told to go do something different than the client, you're going to write that time off and it doesn't even count toward this goal that you were given as a staff person. That's a scary goal to try to meet. When someone tells you, whether it's a year goal or whether it's a weekly goal of 65 hours a week, it just seems like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get the other things done that I want? So it drives behavior to do things that aren't as important because there's a budget to do those things, versus the things that are important for the client or for learning and the firm or for client experience. And it also doesn't give you a clear look on what you should actually be charging the client, because a lot of times, and I know, I'm going to admit, as a staff person, I was not always honest about my time if I went over, because I didn't want to look bad. So I didn't put those hours in because I was afraid that I wasn't going to be viewed good in the firm. And so how can you actually know you're charging the client enough? And that is the human side of putting something like that on people, is that they want to achieve, they want to look good. And if I fail to my boss or to my manager and I don't know another way to show that I'm providing value, then everyone's losing at the end of this. And so we really wanted to kind of focus on this today, because the issue so much of this comes around just not letting this timesheet go so that we can create the work life that people want, but also a better client experience and doing the right thing for the client.
Yes. Well, and it's funny because, what we really are worried about is like if we get honest about our value system or the value system we wish we had as a firm, we care about the client experience and we care about adding value to clients and transforming clients' lives. And we care about developing our people and we care about, delivering quality experiences. And over focusing on time is counter to that. It's like in opposition with that or something. And if I'm over focused on time, I either, am just trying to hammer time, which means maybe put too much time into files. And whether we write it off or not, I'm creating like inauthentic wins or something. And that has no value bearing on the client. Or I'm, hiding time, like you mentioned, burying time. And or trying to cut corners and not put the time in because the budget you gave me is unrealistic to deliver the kind of client quality and experience that we need. So maybe I'm not even doing all that I should be doing because I'm scared of the time. And so one of the things I tell people all of the time is to stop using that 4-letter word time.
Mm-hmm.
like to really eliminate it from your verbal vocabulary and your written messages to team members. And you will find that is a very hard request I'm making because you will be shocked by how much of the communication time you spend has the word time in it. That's the first thing. And the second is to recognize, I watched and shared with my kids this hilarious TikTok the other day that had a client call coming in remotely on a computer with a baby boomer, a Gen X, a millennial, and a Gen Z. And the baby boomer, the calls coming in unexpectedly, 10 a.m. it said, and he of course answers it, says, "Oh yes, how can I help you?" Very service oriented. Has to fumble for his glasses, can't really read. They made that poor person seem a little old, but very service oriented. The Gen Xer has like rap music playing and is all mumbles under their breath how irritated they are that client's calling without an appointment, but they take the call. The millennial walks up to the sees who it is, reading the screen. They're kind of bathrobe, and they say, if they really need me, they'll Slack me. And the Gen Z never shows in frame at all because they're not there. They're out of offices on. They don't take calls before 10 or whatever. And it's a funny farce or whatever. It's meant to be over the top or whatever, but it's the truth as to how younger people value personal time versus work time and how they want boundaries and they don't want to hear that they have to work in a job that's going to eat 65 hours a week out of them at any time, let alone 10 weeks a year, twice a year at least, where we're going to overemphasize time and we're going to hammer them if they're not working tons and tons of hours to meet these goals. And we've made the profession pretty unattractive because of this obsession with time.
Mm-hmm. And the mindset shift is hard because, like me and many partners that are the ones responsible for the time, this is how we were trained. This is how we were trained of what our value was versus the value of the client anymore is not about how much time it took you. It's about what is the advice and how fast can you get it to me. And so if I'm still budgeting 40 hours for something that really I could do in 10, but I'm offering that quicker and the value is higher and I can have a deeper conversation, that's what the client wants at the end of the day. So what it takes is a mindset shift, which is really hard because any habit that we create or belief system is drilled into our brains. And we, many times, and I know Jen and I have both been in these conversations where the pushback is like, well, then how would we know how our staff is doing? Well, how would we know how these clients are doing? And that's the mindset shift, is you do it through leadership and through management and being able, it's not a one-to-one relationship with the staff. It's a team approach. And just like a corporation, you can see the profitability of any service line that you're working in if you're managing your P&L appropriately and classifying your clients appropriately and teams appropriately. But if anyone is not making deadlines, deadlines are deadlines, whether you put an hour requirement to it or not. But if something is due by a certain date and someone's name is the one that is accountable for doing that work, if they are not keeping up with the deadline, that's when management and leadership have to come in to find out, why are you not keeping up with the deadline? What's the issue? And a lot of times you might realize there's a scope change, or the clients ask for something else, but they didn't know to go to someone to make sure you're billing for that and making sure that you catch it while it's happening. And so someone's got to be being that leader, not just managing a time report, but managing the actual project and work that's being done and giving the real-time, feedback and observation of what's going off, listening, getting out and understanding what's happening so that you can fix that project. It's not a time issue. It's the work that needs to be monitored and managed.
Completely. And you used a, magic word in there that made me smile really big. And it, project management, and not project management like we need a whole bunch of PMPs, or certified and in our business suddenly walking around managing every project with that level of detail. But, in order to move away from time, you have to establish that new value system, which ought to have the client and their satisfaction and the depth of service that they're perceiving from us as a high KPI or new measurement. So measurements are critical here, measuring output, measuring results, but also management. We have to have project management. We have to know how many projects do we have and who's delivering what, over what timing, what are the deliverables, what are the outputs, who's got the ball on those outputs, how many outputs can we expect from people of a certain kind in a certain time period through the project pipeline, and Gantt chart management to say, man, we have so many of those projects for the capacity and resources that we have that we really are at full capacity and can't say any more yeses. Firms don't manage like that. They manage like, we have this number of bodies and we're going to try to milk this number of chargeable and total hours out of them. And we don't even use experience as a factor necessarily. We might take their level as a factor, but we act like those hours equal quality, they equal client sat, they equal deliverables being met by deadlines, and they don't. That isn't how it works. Pile of hours does not equal those other things. And so instead of managing those other things, we're managing hours as if it will cause those things, and then we're surprised when it doesn't. Meanwhile, it's like we're tone deaf to the market, tone deaf to the audience who hates being hounded and pounded on hours. And this year, this spring, more than ever before in the whole history, I've been doing this at Convergence Coaching 23 years. We just had our birthday. This year, more than I've ever gotten before, I've gotten emails from seniors, supervisors. We've heard from associates, and I've gotten managers and senior managers, people on the path to partner, high potentials that we have coached in our leadership programs, sending me messages or asking for 30 minutes of my time. When they do that, I'm always panicked when they're a past coaching participant that they're going to tell me they're going to quit. And they're all talking to me about our firm has seemed to have lost its way because they are sending the most outrageous messages about time. And they have set these incredible goals, like I've got to have 58 chargeable hours a week somehow. for the, and they've taken my weekends and they've taken my nights and they're pounding me an email every day with time, 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 time. And I think they've lost the people side of this business. I think they've forgotten what our mission and our vision and our value state, because the way they're talking to us is like we're machines, like we don't have lives, and like managing the pile of time equals managing quality and depth of relationship and mentoring our staff. There's no time allocated for those things. And they're just managing this time equation and not the other elements. And that breaks my heart, because most of them are like, so where can I work where that won't be? Like, how can you, are there firms not doing that you could refer me to? Or do I have to leave public in order to get out from under this outrageous droning on and on and on about time?
Well, and I just remember, because I think what's really important when we think about a mindset shift is remembering what it was like to be that staff person, what your day-to-day was like that you had no control over, and the feeling of what things you wanted to be working on versus what you get assigned to be working on, and not having much control over that. I remember the first job that I had after public accounting where I didn't have a timesheet, and I was kind of lost for a little bit, because I was like, we don't have to keep our time. No one's monitored. Like, I didn't even, know another world where we didn't have to keep a timesheet by every 10 minutes of the hour of what we were working on. And that's so inefficient as well, to have to keep writing down what you're working on every 10 minutes as well. But, or less, that can be the case too. However, when you think about a corporation, there's time built in for people management, and managers' responsibility is not just the work, but it's also to be meeting with the staff, not just on what they're doing, just to keep up with them, making sure everything's going okay, that they can get the feedback that they get, to notice if anything is off with the staff. And then you also have time to train. Not to say corporate life isn't just as demanding as public accounting life, but if I worked 60 hours a week in my corporate life, I don't know it. Like, it was a stressful week.
That's
It was
funny.
documented that I worked 60 hours a week. I didn't have to say my non-billable chargeable time wasn't as important as my chargeable time, all of that stuff. Like, I just know I had a really busy week. And that is the case with busy season. Everyone knows it's going to be busy, but everyone's got a workload that they're responsible for with deadlines. You don't need a time requirement on top of that. You just need to know when it's due. Someone's monitoring if you're getting off track, and you can help clear the path for them as a manager, which is your job, to make sure you're clearing the way that they can be the best that they can be, whatever is stopping them, if they need learning, whatever that is. But that's what gets away from this when we're so focused on time, and that conundrum in many partners' heads of like, well, how would I know how the business is doing? You are, when you talk to clients, you know that they're not monitoring everything with every 10 minutes. And you're evaluating their financial statements and telling them things that they need to do to improve their operations. And you're doing the analysis and the analytics, and you've got benchmarks and KPIs and all of those things to know how your business is doing. And then you're evaluating staff to know which staff are failing and which ones are succeeding, and then what you need to do to bridge that gap or to move off of some staff and bring new ones on. That is part of leadership. So if we know how to do that with our clients, and we know how to give that advice to clients, then we just need to take our own advice and bring it into our businesses, so that we're not creating this situation where people don't want to be a part of what we do, because what we do is so important. And it's interesting. There's so many things that you can do with a career like this, but this is not the cross the bear and ruin it. Like,
Well,
it's,
yeah.
this is something that is really the moment to pause and what we can do different.
Well, and so, a couple more thoughts on that, this cross to bear idea. One is go out and go to Reddit, go to Fishbowl, go, take a look at Going Concern and the comments on their posts. There's
About
so
time.
many. What? Pardon me?
It's about time.
Well, yeah,
It's
all about time. And
yeah.
it's like, it's young people writing about how grossed out they are by this. And you could say, well, they need to buck up, or they just don't understand our business model. Well, wait a minute. If an entire generation is rejecting our profession by not enrolling in accounting and by not getting a degree in accounting and not taking the CPA exam, and that's what's happening because all that's declining and shrinking. If they are rejecting it, then you can't say, well, too bad, they just don't understand it. You've got to say, wait a minute, maybe we need to change it. And that's what this conversation Amy and I are having is about. We think we're way past time. The other thing is that I have people who I feel like are super serious keepers in this profession that would benefit any firm in this country. And their hearts are breaking right now because they are getting talked to because they didn't have 55 billable hours. They're getting like a talking to instead of having somebody stop and say, what'd you do last week, to find out that they did, a webinar for the firm with one of their afternoons or something. Instead, they actually get they get dinged and have to like explain themselves, instead of there might be an assumption that a really good person didn't hit that number this week for good reasons that are good business reasons. And it's just, it's breaking our hearts. Amy and I are sad and hurt by this fixation on time, and that we can't seem to get out of our own ways with it. It's so basic. And so we're begging you all as leaders to take this conversation forward in your firms and really look at it and start finding yourself saying time like it's a cuss word. When it comes out, go, oh, I used it. Look at how you use it. If you're typing it, do a quick search for the word time before you hit send. And if it's in there, get rid of it, change it, evaluate why you're writing that. Stop doing it quick before we run them all off. Yeah. And we'd love to hear your opinions on this. Come out it, and we know you'll have some. Come out in social media and say whatever you have to say, or reach it to us directly. And if there's anything else you want us to cover in Leadership Lunch Chat, let us know that too. We really appreciate you tuning in today. Have a great weekend and a great week ahead. Thanks, Amy.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks.